Today, we're diving into a popular post from the Reddit titled as, "I was goofy at Walt Disney World for over 20 years. AMA. This post is not for those who wish to preserve the Disney magic." This post received 71,644 upvotes. Posted by Ihaveanotheridentity, the post reads as follows. If you'd like to preserve the magical guest experience at the Disney theme parks, I suggest you stop reading now. Hi there. This is me and it's nice to meet you. I worked at Walt Disney World for over 25 years. I was a bandit, gangster and tour guide at the Great Movie Ride, sold merchandise in a few stores, worked in guest services at the Polynesian. Couldn't find any pics. Then guest relations as a tour guide, but in 1996 I transferred to the character department and I never looked back. I know you guys are big on proof, so look at this, then look at this. Oh, here's some mega proof. Just for fun. Here's a pic of me teaching the official Disney Princess Wave and playing before parade. Me and the Mickey Mania parade, and here's me in the airport bringing in a plane for a press event. I'll answer any questions you might have unless they get too personal or weird. I know Reddit, so go ahead. Ask me anything. Edit. Before this post gets archived, I want to thank the Reddit community for giving me so much support and encouragement. I am truly honored to be among you. I'm truly touched by all of the gold you gave me for this comment. I'm glad you liked that story. Above all, I sincerely want to thank you for what you did for the Florida hospital. It was truly inspirational and it brought me so much joy. Now, as Mickey would say, see ya real soon. Edit 2. I found 2 videos of me performing Goofy in case you're interested. Clip 1, long, clip 2, short. A comment from user Cruciger says, "Did you like Walt Disney World when you started this job? Do you still like it? What's your favorite thing at the parks that isn't around anymore?" This comment received 1806 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Loved it then and I love it now. I would have to say the Hidden Mickey at the Disney MGM Studios. The actual park used to make a giant Mickey Mouse when seen from an airplane. Echo Lake, where Gertie's is, made his right ear, and the place where that horrible hat was made up the nose. All of the expansions tore it all to shreds though. Sad face. There are a lot of attractions I miss terribly though. Horizons was such a peaceful ride. And cool as shit. And Journey into Imagination with the original Figment had so many amazing tricks in it. I miss Delta Dream Flight and Mr. Toad's Wild Ride a lot too." This reply received 3073 upvotes. A comment from user CommanderLuna says, "What is the funniest thing you've ever seen someone dressed as their character say? Like someone in costume saying something that sounds ridiculous cause they said it in character." This comment received 1072 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "I just farted, Cinderella." This reply received 2763 upvotes. A comment from user Deadlifted says, "Do you prefer parents playing it straight or interacting with you, in character, so to speak?" This comment received 3234 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "For the most part one appreciated when parents would stay in character. I hated when people would tell their kids, 'It's just a guy in a suit. Don't be scared,' which scares the kids even more. What I didn't like was when they would drill me with trivia questions and make me act out the answers. That used to be fun in the old days, but toward the end we had to see as many guests as possible and there was always pressure from management to go faster and faster." This reply received 5305 upvotes. A comment from user out_of_the_corner says, "What's the strangest thing you saw in the back of house areas?" This comment received 3609 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Oh my god, I could go on for days about that. One thing that stands out was a special event where they needed 16 Mickeys all set out in various rooms and seeing all of them backstage was really weird." This reply received 7718 upvotes. A comment from user BK Norton 3 says, What is the weirdest request that a visitor ever asked you to do? This comment received 4203 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "A guy once asked me to choke him for a picture. I didn't. That's a hard one because guests routinely do stupid weird things. I think the worst of them is when people bring their newborn infants to the parks and ask us to hold them for a picture. I can't see shit in Goofy let alone other costumes and I'm wearing giant gloves or paws or whatever depending on what character I am. Why would you let me hold your baby? Yeesh." This reply received 10,930 upvotes. A comment from user Mrs. Jarpek says, "You said at one point you worked in merchandise. Would that possibly be in the Magic Kingdom side? There is one older gentleman, Bud, who changed my life. He held me while I cried and he cried with me about me recently deceased son. If he is one that you keep in touch with, please let him know how thankful I was for him that night. He saved me." This comment received 2512 upvotes. A comment from user Lucas_Prado says, "Any good stories about your magical moments? In 20 years surely you got some good ones." This comment received 15,057 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "I have one moment that stands out above all the rest. I was waiting for someone to ask me this question. It's the reason I left a good job as a VIP tour guide and moved to the character department. I was working City Hall one day when two guests came in with two little girls. One was in a wheelchair and the other one looked like she had just seen death. Both were cut and bruised and the one in the wheelchair had her arm in a cast. The two women were actually nurses from a hospital and were asking for a refund on the girls' tickets, something we avoided doing at all costs. When I asked why, they told me the story. The two girls were with their mom and dad at Epcot and on the way home they got into a horrible car accident. The mother was beheaded right in front of them. The father eventually died too, but the two girls didn't know that yet. They were from overseas and had no money and no contact information for anyone they knew. They were bringing the tickets back to get the girls some much-needed money to help get them back home. My heart absolutely sunk. If you had seen these girls you'd know why. They were truly traumatized. I refunded their tickets and got permission to be their private tour guide for the rest of the day, which they were not expecting. I walked them to the VIP viewing area for the parade, which was as far as I could walk them in the costume we used to wear at City Hall. I had to leave them there while I put on my VIP costume. On the way down I pulled out every kid joke I could think of. I was a really good tour guide. I helped write part of it. And I knew how to make kids smile. Nothing worked. These girls were too far gone for that. I left them at the bridge to go change, walked backstage and bawled my eyes out. I just had never seen something so horrible. I was truly affected and it was a terrible feeling of powerlessness not being able to fix the situation. When I came back I brought them to get ice cream, take them on rides and stuff, but they never smiled, not once. The nurses were loving it and were trying to get them into it, but it just wasn't working. We went back to the bridge to watch the parade. It was there that I honestly saw true magic. Real magic, not bullshit. I had called the parade department to let them know what was going on and set up a private meet and greet after the parade. As the parade was coming around Liberty Square, I told the girls that I had called Mickey and told him all about them. I told them that Mickey asked to meet them after the parade. The little girl in the wheelchair smiled. "Really?" she asked. My heart skipped. "Yes, really. He told me to tell you to look out for him in the parade and to follow the float back to City Hall." The other girls smiled. "You mean right now?" she asked. It had worked. They were talking. Not laughing, but talking. It was the first time I had heard them speak. Every single parade performer came up to them on the bridge and told them to look out for Mickey. Every one of them told them that. When Mickey's float came up, Mickey, who was attached to a pole at the top of the float, managed to turn her body sideways, look down at the girls and point towards Main Street. That was all it took. The girls were excited now. They had forgotten about death. They were lost in a magical world and I couldn't believe I was watching it unfold in front of my eyes. We followed that float all the way back to City Hall, singing Mickey Mania the whole way. Back then, City Hall used to have a VIP lounge behind the desk that was for privacy during difficult situations or to host celebrities. I took them in and showed them the book where all of the autographs were. They were eating it up. The girl who was Mickey that day got down off her float and without even taking her head off walked up to me backstage and said, "Let's go." I walked in with Mickey behind me so I got to see the exact moment the girls met their new friend. They got shy but Mickey was in control now. Those girls met the real Mickey Mouse that day. Every single parade character stayed dressed to meet those girls. One by one they'd come in and play a bit then leave. We were in that lounge for over an hour. Mickey stayed in costume the entire time, which is hard to do after a parade. When Mickey finally said goodbye, I had two excited girls on my hands that couldn't stop smiling. They talked and talked and talked. We had a wonderful day after that, but what I remember most is when we walked by the rose garden. The older one said, "Oh, my mommy loves roses. I mean," and she stopped. I held out my hand and walked her to the gate, picked her up and put her on the other side and said, "Pick one." She looked happy as she picked out her favorite rose. She didn't say anything more and she didn't need to. I said goodbye to the wonderful Noor S's and the wonderful girls, then walked backstage behind the train station. This time I didn't cry. It felt so good to be a part of that. I realized that as much as I liked helping guests at City Hall, the true magic of Disney was in the character department. I auditioned, transferred and never looked back. Thanks for letting me relive this. It was a special day for me. This reply received 98,602 upvotes. A comment from user Catterday_yet says, "Are the stereotypes about people who play different characters true?" This comment received 2,485 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "If you're talking about the face performers, the answer is yes and no. Some of the break rooms are like the high school cafeteria where the cool princesses, Elsa and Anna, sit on one side and make eyes at the old characters, Snow and Poppins. It's really childish. Other face performers think they're on Broadway and demand respect and they hate not getting it. But those are extreme cases of a few bitches. For the most part the face performers are as much a character as any of us. Some of them are the sweetest people I've ever met in my life." This reply received 6,700 upvotes. A comment from user Azuya says, "If Goofy and Pluto are both dogs, then how come Pluto has to live in a doghouse while Goofy plays golf with Mickey?" This comment received 1,371 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Goofy is better at golf." This reply received 4,501 upvotes. A comment from user Tumorman says, "Any good stories of playing Goofy around the time a Goofy movie came out?" Bonus question. Have you ever met Powerline? This comment received 5,542 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Oh my God. The first time some kid asked me to do the perfect cast, I had no idea what he was talking about, so I faked it. The kid didn't buy it, but luckily I had an escort. That's what they called attendance back in the day. Tell the kid that I already forgot it. Which is bullshit if you watch the movie. They don't prepare you for details like that in training. You're just supposed to figure it out yourself. Never met Powerline unfortunately." This reply received 9,004 upvotes. A comment from user JD Miston says, "What were your coworkers like? Is everyone filled with the Disney spirit, or do people hate their jobs there like any other job?" This comment received 4,116 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "It's really like any other job. I went through phases myself. At first, every time I farted pixie dust registered would blow out of my butt, but after several years I got kinda bitter. It was all management stuff though. On set I was fine and loved it, but backstage stress got to me for a while and I was big on holding Disney accountable. After about 10 years though I calmed down. I loved every single minute while on set. For the most part. and some of my coworkers will be friends for life. You get out of it what you put into it. This reply received 7851 upvotes. A comment from user Jadzia says, "Where do you go in your career from here?" This comment received 1314 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "That's how this whole AMA started. I made a comment in Advice Animals in response to someone who was frustrated they were 30 and making a career change. I'm 46 now. I have zero job skills other than making people laugh. I never thought I'd ever do anything else, so I'm stuck. Maybe working with troubled teens or some other kind of service work. I just want to find something that gives me as much passion as Disney did, which is hard." This reply received 3870 upvotes. A comment from user Joshinator says, "Hey there, worst and best customer experience you ever had?" This comment received 3146 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, worst guest experience? It's a tie between having my life threatened at a grad night party one time and one time I had to tell a guest that their son was in jail for stealing from one of the stores and she did not take it very well. Best guest experience? I've got too many to mention. One that stands out is when I was working at Mickey's character spot at Epcot. There was an older gentleman that came up in the queue but didn't come see me. He just sort of stood in the back and watched me for a while. After about 20 minutes he came up to me and said, "Goofy, I had a special friend that would want you to have this. In Goofy you have to look down in order to make it look like Goofy is looking at you, so I couldn't see him but I heard him holding back the tears. He was shaking a bit but he gave me a hug anyway. I will never forget that hug. It was one of those hugs that last with you. He was crying in my arms. He had given me this, which is a pin they give to family members or friends of Pows and Mias. It's become one of my most prized possessions." This reply received 12,121 upvotes. A comment from user ITWASNTME69ing says, "Could you speak to people while in costume? Can you do a good Goofy voice impersonation?" This comment received 1298 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "We are not allowed to ever talk in costume in front of guests. Ever. Backstage, however, anything goes. I used to love telling dirty jokes to unsuspecting new hires. I do have a good Goofy laugh, but it took me years to perfect." This reply received 3756 upvotes. A comment from user Placesta4GTA4 says, "What's the worst child, adult tantrum you've witnessed?" This comment received 2346 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "I once saw an adult beat the absolute living shit out of a pre-teen boy on set as the Queen of Hearts. We're told never to interact when something like that happens, so I had to leave. I've seen tons and tons of guests lose their shit in guest relations, particularly when it involved people not getting their way. I wish I had a camera sometimes. I would get so much delicious karma from public freakout." This reply received 4603 upvotes. A comment from user Aaron P613 says, "How do you survive on really hot days?" This comment received 6132 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Practice actually. It was absolute torture the first month, and especially the first parade. But after a few months I got used to it, and after a few years I would forget I had the costume on." This reply received 10,140 upvotes. A comment from user An anonymous user says, "Why did you quit?" This comment received 4541 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "I was fired." To make a complicated story short, Donald Duck was, as usual, being a jerk and wouldn't leave my area because I had signed, "Love, Goofy," right over the bill of a Donald Duck hat. He threw a temper tantrum, and as I was dragging him across the floor to get him back to his position, a little kid ran out from behind the curtain at Pete's Silly Sideshow and we knocked her on her butt. The kid was fine and no one complained, but Disney didn't really appreciate me dragging the costume on the carpeted floor, so they terminated me. This reply received 14,204 upvotes. A comment from user That's Me at Disney says, I know this is going to get buried, but that's me and my sister in the photo you posted playing before the parade. That picture would have been taken in 1996. Will post proof if I can find another image of my 10-year-old self. It really is a small world after all. This comment received 4,577 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, Really? I remember feeling like I embarrassed you too. It's so nice to meet your adult self. This reply received 250 upvotes. A comment from user Here Comes Papa Rima says, How did you manage the goofy chuckles? This comment received 198 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, I loved every single time someone would try to do it. Only once was I impressed. I mean totally. This reply received 399 upvotes. A comment from user Bert Manigert says, Is it true that someone gets fired if two of the same characters appear in the same area of the park? This comment received 7015 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, It would depend on the situation. I've met my double on set by accident a few times over the years. It happens to the best of us, but it was just that, an accident. The only way someone would get fired, I'm only guessing here, is if they did it on purpose. This reply received 9157 upvotes. A comment from user Gyra says, What is your favorite memory working there? This comment received 2555 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, Sigh, I can't really figure that out. I've tried to answer that question 100 times but I can never pinpoint a specific moment that stands out from the rest. I have a few tear-jerkers, a few laugh-out-loud moments, and a few horror stories. One that does stand out was at Give Kids the World, which is where all the Make-A-Wish kids stay when they come to Disney. Truly a magical, spectacular place. A woman came up with her son who was born with a birth defect that meant he had no muscles in his neck. He looked really bad and his head had to be supported by his mom. This was a special circumstance. The kid's wish was to be held by Goofy. That's it. Just to be held. The mother told me that because of his life problems, everyone is afraid to even touch him. She laid him very carefully in my arms, sitting on the ground, and let go. We rocked back and forth on that floor for what seemed forever. It was one of the times where I forgot I had the costume on and I just cried and cried. He was such a special kid. I'll never forget that. This reply received 14,559 upvotes. A comment from user Hawal says, What is the weirdest story of one of your coworkers getting fired? What did they get fired for? This comment received 1783 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, Well, the worst I personally saw was in the 90s when Fantasyland Character Festival was still around, which was the old queue for 20K Leagues Under the Sea. One of our greeters, that's what they called them then, their attendants now, was a trans woman. That wasn't fooling anyone, and the police came and picked her up backstage. Evidently she was the father of a missing child and she was hiding out at Disney. Fucked up, huh? There was also the infamous Michael Chartrand case, who was the Tigger that felt up one of the guests. That was a really embarrassing blemish for Disney. It was on the front page of the Orlando Sentinel, which is plopped down on everyone's doorstep at Disney, in the premium resorts anyway. He got his job back. There was a totally bizarre court case. His lawyer actually dressed up as Tigger to give the closing arguments, but he was fired a few years later for allegedly doing the same thing to one of the photographers. This reply received 4319 upvotes. A comment from user Manny_Bothan says, Don't know if it was you or not, but my 2-year-old son was terrified meeting the characters. He wouldn't get near you guys for a picture, but when Goofy played peek-a-boo with him from a distance he loved it and talked about it for months. So thanks Goofy. Did you have any other favorite techniques for dealing with reluctant or scared little dudes? This comment received 189 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Playing peek-a-boo was my standard go-to with frightened children. It also helped if I pretended to be scared too, then slowly took steps closer. The worst thing that happens is when parents try to force their kids on me or scold them for being scared. It always made the situation worse." This reply received 78 upvotes. A comment from user Purple HP says, "Do you smile in the costume when you're taking photos with other people?" This comment received 20,601 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Almost every time." This reply received 6,495 upvotes. A comment from user Guaki says, "What is the worst thing that you ever saw happen to a guest at Disney?" This comment received 377 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Wow, I have so many. I've answered some of this in the comments above, but one thing that stands out was an emergency park dump one 4th of July in '95. There was a weird power glitch and all of the attractions went down at the same time and had to be evacuated. When they do the fire code estimates of how many people can be in the park at one time, it is assumed that people will be in the rides. The 4th of July is one of the park's busiest days of the year. Everyone dumped into the common areas of the park and it became dangerously crowded. One guest freaked out and pulled out something sharp and started stabbing guests to get out. I had to bring a stabbed guest back to her hotel to get her ID so she could go to the hospital. I'd never been so thankful to get off the desk in City Hall. That was a nightmare." This reply received 1249 upvotes. A comment from user Gogopogo says, "Hi, thanks for the AMA. Has a cast member's head, or glove, shoe, something, ever fallen off while out in the park? How does WDW deal with that if it happens? Also, can you talk about the process to learn to do Goofy's signature? I guess I've never compared them across multiple members, but are the signatures standardized and do you have to have your ability to sign as your character tested in any way?" This comment received 1342 upvotes. A comment from user Wilmore ROFL says, "What was the pay like? Must not have been too bad." This comment received 1845 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Well, I had 25 years of seniority but only made about $15 an hour. Because Florida is a right-to-work state, the union is pretty much impotent there. It's not like California. They get paid way more. Edit. I stand corrected. Only equity characters make bank. The others are paid around the same as I was. Not sure of the details, but that's the gist I'm getting." This reply received 4230 upvotes. A comment from user unknown FY24 says, "What is your favorite Disney movie?" This comment received 1410 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Tough call. I'm really partial to The Little Mermaid because of Ursula, but I think all in all it has to be Ratatouille. That movie has some of my all-time favorite quotes, especially Anton Ego's SP speech at the end of the film. I also loved Dumbo, as racist as it was, but that's because Timothy Q. Mouse is probably my favorite character of all." This reply received 3163 upvotes. A comment from user Check Your Assumption says, "I don't know if you'll read this, but Disney lost an irreplaceable asset when they fired you. The person that fired you hurt the company. Would you consider going back there? Surely, someone at Disney could reinstate you. Considering how this has blown up, I can only imagine someone with that ability has read this and is thinking the same thing I am. I haven't come close to reading all your replies, but 2 of them moved me to tears and I'm not a very big fan of Disney." This comment received 462 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "I would go back in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, this AMA would prevent that anyway. My therapist suggested it as a way to provide closure to the grieving process. Thank you for the kind words though. I appreciate it." This reply received 155 upvotes. A reply from user Pacman 35503 says, I got down to 1938 comments left before I found this, and I must say I second this advice. To be honest, this sounds like a sales job. I consider sales to be a transference of feeling. Op sounds like a superstar and WDW has lost an enormous asset. This reply received 93 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, I really appreciate that. This reply received 54 upvotes. A comment from user Blakesta444 says, is that dog in the picture a good boy? This comment received 4576 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, that's my dog Max, named after Goofy's son. He's a very good boy. This reply received 6677 upvotes. A comment from user flourish_and_blot says, in what ways have the parks changed during the 25 years you've worked there? Have you ever broken character while working as Goofy? This comment received 439 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, the parks have grown since I started. Actually, there were only 3 when I started. But the real change has been in the management. They lost something when Michael Eisner took over. For example, the park used to close at 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve so that the cast could be with their families. They used to close the park and have Christmas parties just for us. We were allowed to ride the rides in our costumes and do things we wouldn't normally do for the day guests. They don't do that anymore. They're open until 2 a.m. and open up early the next day. There's an atmosphere that's just gone now. The new management, I mean after 9/11 specifically, is very concerned about the bottom line, red money. That's not just me being bitter. That's shown in everything they do. For example, there are very few, and I mean a handful, character managers that were actually characters. That used to be unheard of. As far as breaking character, only a few times when the circumstances warranted it. They were far in between. This reply received 1117 upvotes. A comment from user RealityCheck17 says, what, exactly, is Goofy? This comment received 2787 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, he's an anthropomorphic dog. Yes, we get that question a lot. This reply received 5840 upvotes. A comment from user Poonmaster3000 says, any cool insider tips you could tell us if we visit the park? This comment received 384 upvotes. A comment from user erected_naps says, when I was young I got lost at Disney World and refused to speak to anyone except Goofy since he was my favorite and I didn't consider him a stranger. The whole time he stayed in character he ended up finding my mom for me and it always was a great memory for me. Probably wasn't you, but did you ever have situations like that? This comment received 584 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, wasn't me, but I'd like to shake the hand of the Goofy that helped you. That's a true magic moment. This reply received 82 upvotes. A comment from user Culinary Crime says, are there videos of you on YouTube as Goofy that you know are you? I would love to see how you move and act in character. This comment received 393 upvotes. A comment from user CarnageRazor says, ever bang someone in the costume? This comment received 2499 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, no, and contrary to popular belief there aren't many furries in the character department. I know there are a few. I knew one of them. But it's not something that's out in the open for sure. This reply received 4655 upvotes. A comment from user Norris667 says, are the Disney Corporation really as cold-heartedly capitalist as the adult me has been led to believe? This comment received 1918 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, yes and no. Disney has lost their focus and the old Disney cast members that held those old company values have all retired, but Disney is a great company to work for regardless. I can give you an example of how corporate Disney has taken over what I like to call traditional Disney. The place where all of the characters used to break was called the zoo. Everyone knew the characters as the zoo crew. If you wanted a character, you either called the headroom or the zoo. It was a Disney tradition and everyone got a kick out of it. Then this guy named David, who was the entertainment vice president, came in and didn't think that sounded too professional, so he changed the name to the base. Eventually all the zoo signs came down and were replaced. The zoo disappeared and it got sterile really quick. We used to have nice big couches to relax on, and David had them all thrown out and replaced by metal chairs. A part of the character department died that day. Anyway, they're way too concerned with numbers now. We used to just stroll the parks and play with people, but in the end we were all held accountable to see as many guests as we possibly could during our sets. They hound you to go faster and faster. They figure 23 seconds. A number I pulled out of my butt, mind you, but I know it's under 30, is plenty of time to see a family of 4. I turned into an autograph machine towards the end, but I always stayed true to my character. A lot of performers don't do that anymore. It's sad. This reply received 4454 upvotes. A comment from user NMS1539 says, "What are some secrets about Disney World logistics that we may not know?" This comment received 205 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, One is the automated vacuum-assisted collection system in the Magic Kingdom. There's a tunnel underneath. It's actually the first floor. The second and third floors are what you see in the park. And the AVACS is a series of tubes that connects all of the restaurants to the main dump that's behind Splash Mountain. The trash is whisked away under the park so the guests don't have to see it or smell it. It's pretty cool. This reply received 620 upvotes. A comment from user Parker604 says, "Did you get things like discounted or free admission and rides when you had days off?" This comment received 102 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "It used to be that we could get into the parks whenever we wanted, but that changed. Now it's only on certain days for certain parks. I loved going on the rides." Smiley face. Edit. I was talking about taking people into the park with me. CMs are allowed to get in any day of the year by themselves, with possible exceptions for the park closing due to capacity. Even on those days they're admitted if they're going to work. This reply received 222 upvotes. A comment from user Prison Bull says, "My daughter was having a tantrum. A character appeared and alleviated the situation. Is this a coincidence or the patrons being watched that closely?" This comment received 414 upvotes. A comment from user Freekick07 says, "Have you ever accidentally given the old Goofy Hancock when signing for something out of character?" This comment received 251 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "My signature on my driver's license is Goofy's autograph. I signed it as a joke, but the lady at the DMV told me my signature could be anything I wanted. I've signed Goofy by accident a few times. I did a lot of Tigger too and would sometimes forget who I was and sign Goofy anyway." This reply received 73 upvotes. A comment from user Glossity says, "Where's Walt's frozen head?" This comment received 314 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Under the castle in a box marked, 'Beware of the leopard.'" This reply received 942 upvotes. A comment from user Raquel Woodstock says, "Howdy. Thanks for the AMA. My question is, how does one move on after termination from Disney? Can you not work at any other Disney-related attraction? What do you do now?" This comment received 420 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "I'm not sure if I can ever go back. Right now I'm just doing odd jobs to survive and I'm getting help from my family. The problem is finding my passion. I never intended to leave Disney and that was my passion. I think I'd like to go into a field where I'm able to help people, perhaps with troubled teens or people with addiction problems. I have zero experience though, so not many doors are open to me at the moment, but I'm working on ways to fix that." Smiley face. This reply received 256 upvotes. A comment from user Example says, "How does the signature process go? Are you taught the correct signature, or does each Goofy have a different one? Also, how long did it take you to perfect the signature?" This comment received 134 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "We used to be able to sign our character's autograph any way we wanted, except Mickey. But then a guy named Chris came up with standard autographs which are consistently used no matter who the performer is, which is way better in my opinion. We have a small summary of the character that has the autograph on it and we try to make it look the same when we sign. Goofy is easy to do, but I can write it upside down which would totally freak the guests out. Smiley face. That took a while to learn. I can also sign it behind my head and with my eyes closed." This reply received 414 upvotes. A comment from user Caution Wet Taint says, "What is the casting process like?" This comment received 183 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "If you mean the audition process, it's like any dance audition you've ever been to, but there's an animation part that's fun. Wait tables like Donald Duck. Mow the lawn like Pluto, etc. The casting for everyone else depends on what role you're applying for. Some require a math test, some require multiple interviews. It used to be kind of hard to get hired by Disney, but now they'll take anyone who doesn't have multiple felonies on their record. They just got too big." This reply received 385 upvotes. A comment from user An anonymous user says, "Was farting in your Goofy suit horrible?" This comment received 123 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Goofy wasn't so bad. It was Baloo and Brer Bear that were horrible because the gas kind of festers inside the costume. One time I farted before going out on set as Brer Bear, and when I opened the door there was a small child there. I knelt down to meet him and all the air in my costume got squeezed up and out of my neck. Were we see from in that costume? I know it sounds like I'm making this up, but I almost knocked the kid over. I had to leave set because I was laughing so much, mostly because he said, 'Ooh, you have bad breath.'" This reply received 105 upvotes. A comment from user The Random Guy 9988 says, "What is Disney jail like?" This comment received 125 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "It's just a room over the candy shop on Main Street. There's an officer back there that takes people to the local jail on 33rd Street in Orlando." This reply received 297 upvotes. A comment from user Andoink says, "I've been to Walt Disney World like 15 times in my 26 years of life. Huge fan. Brainwashed from childhood. It's extremely possible I've interacted with you on multiple occasions. Goofy was always my favorite. My question is, do you prefer interacting with excited children who get to meet Goofy, or adults who truly appreciate that you bring that nostalgic magic to life? I know there are evil sides of both worlds, but considering the best of them, which ends up being the more interesting interaction? Thanks for everything, Goofy." This comment received 274 upvotes. A comment from user Throwaway2776 says, "How well known is your face at MK, EP, HS, AK? It strikes me that you have the perfect skills to become a private VIP guide at WDW, While not illegal, it's frowned upon by the parks, but the pay is a lot better." This comment received 56 upvotes. A comment from user The Ext Doctor says, "What was the most unintentionally Goofy klutz moment you've had while working?" This comment received 196 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "I once misjudged a step and ended up in the mud up to my knees at a park once. It was a special cast member event so I got away with it. I've tripped countless times and was always able to make it part of the act, so to speak. I almost cut off a guest's toes once. I was Baloo and she was wearing open sandals, which was disgusting because of the blood. I also fell down the stairs on the castle stage as the Queen of Hearts once. Not my proudest moment. This reply received 459 upvotes. A comment from user Angry Squirrel 777 says, "What are the coolest aspects of Disney that a visitee will never see or know about?" This comment received 145 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "What it feels like to put a genuine smile on someone's face while dressed up as a character." This reply received 360 upvotes. A comment from user Pokey Pokey says, "Did you perform this song while in character? I could really imagine a behind-the-scenes shot of you on the vocals, doing it hard." This comment received 100 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Okay. That is playing in the background for this AMA now. Thank you for this. Smiley face." This reply received 92 upvotes. A comment from user Courtside Drama says, 1. How did you get through when you were having bad days but had to keep up a jovial, lovable character? 2. Did you have to keep your identity hidden from family, friends, or could you openly tell people you played goofy? 3. Any women, girls try to hit on you while you were in character? This comment received 133 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, 1. Bad days were fine because I was hidden behind a costume. 2. When I worked there it was very important I not give away what I did for a living. I never told people what I did or I would say I was really good friends with Goofy. 3. Not that I'm aware of. Edit. Okay. I lied about number 3. I did have a couple women grab my butt and a few were a little too affectionate. This reply received 139 upvotes. A comment from user Shiki says, "What's the weirdest, creepiest fan encounter you had?" This comment received 94 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "I had 2 stalkers for about 8 months. They were 2 British guests that were here for a long time. They would come watch my first 2 sets. Started when I was Captain Hook but mostly when I was the Queen of Hearts. Then they would go to the Animal Kingdom and watch Lion King and then head back to the Magic Kingdom to see my last 2 sets. They did this every day. An attendant slipped up and told them my name. She assumed I knew them. So no matter what costume I was in they'd find out. I had so much fun with these 2 girls. It got a bit creepy towards the end and they started writing me notes that were weird. Eventually security talked to them and they left me alone. I actually kind of miss them. They were a lot of fun." This reply received 286 upvotes. A comment from user CommanderFox 515 says, "How was it bringing in the 737 at the airport? I'm sure a cool experience since not everyone gets to. I work for an airline and think it's quite fun to do on a daily basis." This comment received 90 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Honestly, it was my most exciting moment at work. I still can't believe they let me do that." This reply received 153 upvotes. A comment from user Trent6295 says, "How goofy does one have to be to qualify?" This comment received 134 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Quite goofy. Quite." This reply received 258 upvotes. A comment from user An anonymous user says, "What are most of the staff like at Disney World? I know a woman who uprooted her and her husband's entire lives to move to Florida so that they could work at Disney and fulfill their dreams. Do other staff share that kind of grandiose opinion of the place, or are most people just regular folk doing a job?" This comment received 129 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, "Honestly, it depends. We have some people that dream of working at Disney their entire lives. Some of them freak out when they find out how it all works and they get bitter. Others come in bitter and Disney gets them and they're full of the dust, the pixie kind. Personally, I was gung-ho at first then calmed down a bit but then exploded again. I loved working there. Well, I loved being on stage with guests. Backstage, the managers are always on your ass, which used to be different. Sad really, but that's the way it went. This reply received 246 upvotes. A comment from user Supreme Technopareist says, I got lost at Disney World when I was younger. My parents tell me that Goofy ended up finding me, tying me to a tree and going to fetch the park security and subsequently my family. Was that you? If so, why wouldn't you just take me with you? Being tied to a tree is very embarrassing for a kid. Laughing face. This comment received 682 upvotes. A comment from user Princess_Parvo says, would you rather fight 100 Donald-sized Philippes or 1 Philippe-sized Donalds? This comment received 1776 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, the former. Donald is a tiny bitch. This reply received 3994 upvotes. A comment from user look_at_my_wiener says, I'm leaving for Disney in 48 hours exactly. Any tips or tricks I should know before leaving? This comment received 183 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, wear comfortable shoes. Book your restaurants in advance. Try not to bring your busy life with you. Enjoy the scenery while you're waiting in the queues. It's a good opportunity to people watch. Don't expect to do half of what you want to do. Prioritize and get the most important stuff out of the way *** on the first day. Don't wait. And know that part of the fun of Disney is discovering things as you go. Ask your fellow guests in line what they think is cool. You'll make some friends and uncover more about the park than I could ever tell you. Smiley face. Have fun and say hi to Goofy for me, okay? This reply received 748 upvotes. A comment from user Kaikai the White Guy says, what made you want to sign up for that job and how spot on is your Goofy voice now? This comment received 115 upvotes. A reply from the original author Ihaveanotheridentity says, I have the best Goofy chuckle which I would sometimes do backstage to entertain cast members when I was dressed as Goofy. As far as what made me want to sign up for Disney, I wanted to ever since I was a kid. I had a rough childhood and going to Disney was the only time my whole family didn't want to kill each other. The first time I went there I knew I wanted to make magic. There's a comment above this where I talk about the reasons I got into the character department. This reply received 345 upvotes.